They'll each be acknowledged. Okay, welcome to our Bucky call for August 19th or 20th, depending on which continent you're on. And we're continuing with our reading and study and commentary on critical path. So Richard, how are you feeling this evening and in Canada, and what do you expect to get out of today?
Well, as I communicated on one of our other sessions, I'm still very affected by the circulation of the fires in our part of the world, and there's now a fire in the northern part of Canada that's had a city of over 20,000 totally evacuated. The fire sits about 14 kilometers outside of the edge of town. The only one road out, which is a long one, 1,400 kilometers to the nearest sort of safety area.
Wow.
And another one in the heart of British Columbia's Okanagan Valley. Another city is under siege, and we have relatives in both of those places, granddaughters in the last one, and still reeling over the loss of everything in the fires in Maui, and the entire disappearance of a town that I was very familiar with, not knowing particular people, but just knowing the whole area. So I can't say I'm feeling all that great, although I want to get some of that energy and adrenaline and hope out of this discussion tonight, and to be ready for whatever comes our way. Now we know that there's a huge hurricane coming up the Baja coast and into California for the first time in something like 85 years. So doesn't matter where you are, there's a crisis of sort of natural bearing or human bearing, no matter where we are in the world these days. And I guess that hasn't been all that different over the years. It's just been different expressions of the tragedies and traumas that people of the world have faced throughout history and now. So that's kind of where I'm at. It's a bit of a downer, but I'll turn it over to Manu and brighten me up from the morning sort of beauty of Cape Town.
Yeah, I feel empathic. Yeah, you know, we've been hearing about all these things, the Maui stuff. Canada, I heard that of evacuation order in BC is very worried. We have a party. I mean, we have to be relative coming down here for some stuff at the end of this month. I just wonder how they feel. They'll be leaving their homes, you know, to come down here, and I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have to chill. We say you pronounce the word hope. Christ is in hope, you know. Yes, we hope for the better, and we hope to survive this together, learn together. That's the most important to me, that we learn from those experiences, and that's actually my expectation. This call to learn and to practice and to share. So, Joe, how do you feel? What do you expect?
I feel grateful to be here with everyone. I appreciate everybody sharing their thoughts. So I feel pretty good today. Feel good. And so I had a good day. So hopefully that brightens up some things for you guys. At least the conversation it will. But I mean, my expectation today is to continue to learn a little bit more about the economic history from Bucky's perspective, and I think that's something that I like to hear everybody else's thoughts and gain from the collective wisdom. And it's also a non-traditional approach to telling the story of especially the United States economy. And so it's important to know our history. So, but I appreciate everybody being here, and I'm looking forward to spending a couple hours with you guys. And Anne, please, as well.
Anne's not here
So,
yet. Go ahead.
yeah, I said guys, I meant Anne too. It was
Okay, I gotcha.
gentlemen and women. So,
Yeah.
so I'll pass it along to Steve. Steve, how you feeling? What would you like to take away from today?
Yeah, pretty good. John Butler declined the invitation tonight, so he's not going to make it. Susan said she would be here. And let's see, was there something else? There was another guy, Phil, who thought he might be here, but he's plugged tentative a couple times on our meeting. And Anne's going to join us in just a few minutes. I'll tell you, I've been listening to a podcast or two on what went on in Hawaii. And, you know, Canada, here in Utah, we heard a lot about Canada and their fires a month ago when the smoke was going into the Northeast, thick in New York, and people were wearing masks. But I didn't know that you guys had 2 cities evacuated up there. And that still is going on because I think Hawaii has stolen all the thunder. And I also heard, we don't have any friends from, if John had been on here, he'd talk about it, but I heard on the news that there's giant fires going on right now in Australia, and that it's the rate the fires are going, there's a whole northern part, the drier part this summer is going to be up in flames, that they figure that a massive amount of Australia could be on fire by the end of the summer. So that is, and from what I've heard about Lahaina is that they had an evacuation system set up with sirens, but it was for tsunamis. It wasn't for fires. Their system was to tell people to head for higher ground. They didn't have a system to say head for lower ground. And so the alarm didn't go off, and there's big debates about that. And I guess it's time to be prepared. You know, I'm thinking right now, I'm on the 3rd floor of this building. And if I had to leave in 4 seconds, I'd probably just leave everything here. I really ought to have my good stuff in a backpack so that when the first weekend I moved in here, they had 3 fire alarms go off for no reason. Somebody was smoking in an elevator. They thought maybe because they said the fire was in the elevator shaft and they couldn't find it. So I guess it's time to be prepared. And I think that's one of the messages of Bucky's book is, hey, open up, take a look at reality and get prepared. So that's what we'll do. And we'll let Anne share when she comes on board. And then we'll go ahead and start our reading unless there's any other comments at this point. Any other comments? Okay. So here we go. We're starting on page 102. And Joe, do you want to
Go ahead
read?
and start?
Yeah.
I can start, yeah, and then we can rotate if necessary or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care.
If we want, you betcha. That is not about
Yeah.
it's what's fun. So cool.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's go for it.
Throughout pre-World War II years, employers had maintained that unemployed people were unemployed because they were unqualified for survival, socially expendable. The World War II saw young people deployed on war tasks all around the world. In view of this loss of labor, vast amounts of automation were incorporated in the USA's home front war production. With the war over, the government found the cream of its youth all unemployed. And because of the automation, there were no jobs in sight. Because they were proven cream of the youth, no one could say they were unemployed because they were unqualified. So the as yet operative New Deal created the GI Bill, which sent all those young people to prepaid college and university educations. By World War II and World War II's end, labor was earning so much that for the first time it was feeling truly secure, affluent, and successful. Emulating the pattern of the rich, individuals of labor were becoming little capitalists, with many enjoying the realization of their own home and land. With two shiny new post-World War II cars in the garage, their kids going to college, and some savings in the bank, the workers began buying shares in IBM and other super promising private enterprise companies. The Wall Street lawyers, being astute observers of such matters, realized that this labor affluence had brought about a psychological reorientation of the body politic. People no longer remembered or felt the depression of spirit that was experienced in the Great Depression of social economics following the Great Crash. The Wall Street lawyers, grand strategists, saw this as the time for breaking through the New Deal's hold on government, an event which, up to that time, seemed impossible. The lawyer said, whoever can get the victorious Supreme Command American general of World War II as their candidate for president will be able to, what's that? Will be able to get the presidency. They captured Eisenhower. Eisenhower had no political conviction one way or the other. His vanity was excited at the idea of becoming president of his country. The Wall Street lawyers explained what's that?
Go ahead. I think I defended Eisenhower.
We did read we read this
again.
last week.
Yeah, I thought.
Well, yeah, I know we did because I remember the shares in IBM being purchased.
Well,
so
let's see. Here's the Dulles.
Wait a minute, is this another Legally Piggly? We've definitely read this.
Well, no, Legally Piggly is a big long section in the book. But here's the thing.
Okay.
Dulles brothers right here. I don't know. Maybe we should continue reading.
I thought we read up to I thought we read up to at least the start of the CIA, if I remembered correctly. But do you want to start here? As soon as the Wall Street lawyers.
Let's keep going where we.
Well, it's just might as well be a completist. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're somewhere in here.
You're down a little. The Wall Street lawyers explained to Eisenhower the prevailing new psychology of affluence and convinced him that the new affluent majority would elect a Republican. Thus, they successfully persuaded him to be a Republican. With the healthy economy, the new wage earner capitalists, with a vested interest in maintaining the status quo, readily voted for Eisenhower on the Republican ticket. Eisenhower's Wall Street lawyer managers explained to him that he had been able to win the war because of the vision, courage, and ingenuity, and the productive power of American free enterprise. They convinced Eisenhower that the USA is in fact free enterprise. They also convinced him that the Democrats' New Deal was socialism and therefore the inherent enemy of free enterprise. As soon as the Wall Street lawyers had Eisenhower in the office in 1952, they instructed him to break loose all the economic controls of the New Deal. They had him cut all price controls, all rent controls, all interest rate controls. They had him terminate anything that was stymieing the making of big money by big business. For instance, they persuaded Eisenhower to allow the insurance companies to invest their vast funds in common stocks. Before Ike's liberation of the insurance companies, they were allowed to put funds only in Class A bonds and similar investments cheered by the capitalists owned sector of the press. His Wall Street lawyer advisors for a long time had Ike feeling like a great liberator. The Wall Street lawyers, grand strategists, put the Wall Street lawyer John Foster Dulles in as Ike's Secretary of State to dictate American foreign policy of Soviet containment. And Foster Dulles' Wall Street lawyer brother Alan Dulles was put in as the head of a new brand of absolutely invisible USA finance capitalistic welfare department, the CIA. Was established ostensibly to Cold War cope with the secret operations of our enemies. So secret was their operation that the people of the United States and its congressional lawmakers had no idea of the size of the unlimited funds given to the CIA. They still don't, nor for what those unknown funds were expended. The CIA and Alan Dulles had a USA signed blank check for X amount of money to do X tasks. I call the CIA capitalists' invisible army. Capitalism's invisible army.
Let's stop right there. I was just listening to Schallenberger and Taibbi's testifying in Congress over how the CIA and the FBI and other government-funded agencies affected Twitter and the social media as revealed by the Twitter files. When Elon Musk got in there, he published a bunch of stuff showing how much influence they've done. And there's been a big conversation about how the CIA and the FBI both have engaged in propaganda tools and it wasn't like they were just being bad guys because they're bad guys. It was like they went from war is bad. Let's don't have war. Let's have a Cold War. The Cold War is over. So let's find a new enemy. That's terrorism. And now at first it's international terrorism. Now it's any kind of terrorism anywhere. And then it just gradually step by step got into where the CIA was dictating policy to Twitter and to the social media. So we're not through that mess right now. And I think we did read this last week, and I defended Eisenhower as best I could because I didn't read clearly here that they captured Eisenhower. And that's one of our big problems today in American government is corporate capture of our institutions. So I'm gonna let anybody who wants a defense of Eisenhower to listen to last week's thing because I posted a couple of really good books in there. But I just wanted to point out that the CIA is continuing with that's an issue still today currently in America. And that was my comment.
Oh my, I think it's much bigger today than it was actually even back then.
Yeah.
But that's when you go back and read that again and you put it in today's context.
Yeah.
In that sense, it's not the CIA. It's all the way back to, that Eisenhower being persuaded that he should declare himself as a Republican because Republicans were going to get elected. So that happened. And it's all being with it used the language of Wall Street lawyers.
Yeah.
Now, I think I would sort of say right-wing street lawyers persuaded Trump to become a Republican, got him elected.
Yeah.
And now the right-wing lawyers tried to finish off the job and go from the enemy of socialism to the enemy of democracy, and let's just finish the job in and get the tyranny of authority in charge.
Yeah.
Wow, what a transformation since the 40s.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing was today I was just reading an article that said, did you know that people that were born in the 1940s, mostly the 40s, a little bit of the 30s, aren't 99% of those people are now dead. And those who are alive today, which I'm one of them, is part of the 1%ers. And I never realized that before. And here I am as a 1%er living in this next takeover from the looks of things. Oh, wow, wow. And at the very start of what we read today was this idea that after the war, people were unqualified for survival, socially expendable. That's so Malthusian, that says you divide the world into the deserving and the non-deserving, and once you get into the category of being non-deserving, then off with your head is really the attitude. I don't really care how we knock off your head. You know, we can ostracize you, kill you, do whatever we want, but you're not. It's back to Fuller sort of always challenging. What do you mean that I have to earn my living or earn a living? The fact that I'm living is earning enough.
Yeah.
But the rest of us seems to think otherwise. That, yeah, wow, this is in today's context. It's so revealing to read what Fuller was saying about the Wall Street lawyers and put it in the context today of what some other kind of lawyers, I don't know if right-wing lawyers is the right name, but it was lawyers that, how many of them of the 19 indicted are lawyers?
Yeah. I think it's Wall Street lawyers. I mean, our crash in 2008 was Wall Street. You know, it's still the big money running things.
Do you think there's still Wall Street lawyers that's doing it, not some other kind of lawyer?
Yeah, they're just, it's all about money.
So Wall Street lawyers want tyranny as well.
Evidently.
Just like with a candidate today from what's his name? Forget now. With the Indian background that says, "Oh, we got to allow Ukraine, Russia to have a portion of Ukraine. We've got to have détente with Putin because we don't want Putin to get too far in bed with China. So we got to put up with him."
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I'm just overreacting.
Yeah, Vivek Swamirami or something like that is his name.
Yeah.
I listened to an hour and a half of him, and half of what he said made some sense. The other half I wasn't too happy about. So Anne has joined us. So Anne, we're just kind of repeating maybe some of what we did last time. We're figuring out where we are. And how are you feeling and what do you expect to get out of today? And thanks for your persistence for being here. Whoop, we can't hear you. You've got to mute.
And my phone started ringing. Hello, everybody. Good morning over here and good evening to everybody. I was listening in. I couldn't join in the conversation. That's all. Yes, actually, this is the point. This where the asterisks are. That's where we're supposed to start today. So yeah, but yes, good to go backwards. Anytime I get to join a meeting, I'm happy. Okay, so that's how it feels this morning. Yes, a lot of things have been going on. We've been watching what's happening in Hawaii, and now more areas are affected in your country. At the same time, also Canada. Yes, we have a disaster of our own here as well, a small one in comparison. But a Beechcraft private jet crashed on one of our roads in one of the residential areas and killed a motorcyclist and a motorist. All died. Yeah. They couldn't even. They didn't even have full bodies, and nobody has. They're so close to home. They're just about to land in the Subang area, which is so close. They veered off, nobody knows why, and it just crashed. So a lot of course, people thinking there is because elections are coming up, and I don't know. I don't know how far some of these rumors are, but that's what just happened just a couple of days ago. My brother lived in that residential area, so it was quite alarming, you know. Anyway, that's one of the news here. Other than that, yes, for critical path, okay, I've been sharing as well what we've been discussing today with some of my team members, and so eye openers, real eye openers. Okay, so carry on. Then has everybody gone? Everybody's gone,
Yeah.
right?
Everybody's
I
gone
heard.
and we're into our reading.
Okay, thank you.
You betcha. Thank you. Yeah, we were supposed to, I think we were supposed to start at page 104. So anyway, we're get there. Just to finish up, I think that's the paragraph is still pending, right? Joe?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Let's just
We
continue.
definitely read up to. We read
Yeah.
up. Yeah, I mean, I remember reading all of this actually.
Yeah, me too.
So it's whatever. It doesn't hurt to go right back over it because at some point I would like to hear people's thoughts on the price controls. So it's only minorly mentioned. The great USA corporations, having been saved in 1933 by only unilaterally socialized and having in the subsequent 15 years become powerfully unhealthy from enormous war orders, immediately after Eisenhower's election started escalating prices. Their logic was that the first corporation had to increase prices in a given field of production would be the first to be able to distribute that upping as profits to his stakeholders and thereby gain for himself greater economic management status and personal wealth. As a longtime student of foreign investment, I saw a pattern developing. Between 1938 and 1940, I was on the editorial staff of Fortune magazine as its science and technology consultant, and my researchers harvested all the statistics for Fortune's 10th anniversary issue. USA and the World, in that issue, I uncovered and was able to prove several new socioeconomic facts. For the first time in the history of industrial economics, the economic health of the American or any industrial economy was no longer disclosed as in the past by the total tonnage of its product output, by the amount of electrical energy generated by that activity. Tonnage had ceased to be the criterion because we were doing so much more given work with so much less pounds of materials. ERGs of energy and seconds of time per given function as to occasion ever newer, lighter and stronger metallic alloys, chemicals and electronics, though at the time universally used as the number one guide to the state economic health of any world nation. Tonnage no longer represented prosperity. The amount of energy being electrically generated and consumed became the most sensitive telltale of economic health. Furthermore, I was able in that issue to study carefully all the foreign investments made in America all the way back to its colonization in the early 17th century. The ramification of my studies in foreign investments in America and elsewhere are wide. An example of my findings included discovery of the SWIFT post-American Revolution investment in USA Ventures by the British East Indian Company advised Financial World, as already mentioned.
Let's pause just
I
for a
found
second. Can we just
Yeah.
pause for a second?
Sure.
This is something new to me. He's saying that before the war, they measured productivity in terms of tonnage of materials delivered. And then after the war, they stopped doing it and started measuring productivity in terms of energy used. My understanding right now, it doesn't matter what we produce, it matters how much profit we make. Seems to me that everything is based on profit, right? It's based on, is the stock value up or down? And did the company make a profit? If the company made a profit, stock value goes up, and nobody's looking at tonnage of things delivered. If I'm reading that right, that's what he's saying. Also, this goes back to his earlier point about ephemeralization, that we're doing more and more with less and less. And instead of having that benefit everybody, it's benefiting the corporation because it's increasing their profits. And I think he's alluding to that here. So I just thought I would check in with everybody and see if that was coming off. And we'll see as we go.
I'm coming at it from the visible and the invisible, that the tonnage, as we measured things visually,
Yeah.
and as he has said in other kinds of contexts, we've gone to an invisible world, and the energy probably reflects that.
Yeah.
And it kind of speaks to the idea of the CIA too, keeping all kinds of things invisible from us.
Yeah.
So it's a whole invisible sort of interloping into our lives. He's just saying profit may be the measure. I was just also reading an article today about the error of short-term investment, thinking that something very profitable in the short term is what you should be investing in instead of investing in the long term.
Oh,
And I have a financial advisor that keeps saying to me, don't look at the stock markets, look at the dividends that they're paying, and get that kind of long-term kind of stability in your portfolio.
wow.
Think is all about, the real thing is that it's all about energy in reality.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what have we made of it? So it's all about energy, but we cook a story around it. We've made it about money. You get me?
Right.
Steve say, if a company makes profit, value goes up. Not necessarily. I can consistently, if I have volume, short a company in a way that in spite of the benefits, in spite of the margin that is created, the price will be down. Because the price does not reflect anymore the fundamentals of a company. The amount of money that are moved, I mean, the leverage of a world is probably less than 2%, less than 5%, let's just put it. In other words, the amount of money in circulation in the world, including debt, like the largest definition of money possible, is probably in the order of 50 times the GDP of the world. I don't know if I'm very far off, Joe.
No, I agree. I mean, and
So
were you talking about the short sellers before, just to clarify?
yeah. I'm just talking about, if you're talking
Okay, yeah,
about money,
yeah.
and money is completely detached from the reality, you can create a
Right.
new reality, perceived reality, that is disconnected from the fundamental. And it's just moving, helping moving value from here to there to profit particular groups. I'm still to see anybody that in the latest 30 years or 40 years have made a bunch of money just trading honestly. I'm talking about fundamentally. You stand no chance.
Complete?
Yep.
Cool beans.
I agree with you. I mean, I agree with you 100%, Mano. And this is actually the gradual process that actually Bucky has captured here when he talked about in the beginning how the entrepreneurs were no longer running the company, that the company was actually being run from Wall Street. And so that detachment from the actual value of what was being produced as, you know, getting back to some of the fundamentals that you were talking about with the company, you know, the company was actually focused on creating something rather than just focused on something that's imaginary. And that's the detachment that we're starting to see here as far as, you know, just the way the book's unfolding anyway. I agree. Anyway, that was a long way of saying I agree. Shall we continue?
Yeah, and he's also insinuating here that the East India Tea Company is alive and well. So cool.
Yeah, they're called Wall Street lawyers now.
Yeah.
I think that what he's saying there is something that was true then that is true today. The war is not about the physical countries that are at war, that kill each other in the killing grade. The war is world games by power who profit from both sides.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you look at the USA Inc., well, there was the East India Company before, during the British colonization.
Well-
Still after that, they are the one that bankroll, you know, the US.
Yeah. I've even heard relative to the Ukraine war that we send $100 million to the Ukraine, but that's in equipment which Ukraine has to pay back eventually, which means that the 100 million we sent to Ukraine really goes into the military industrial complex in America.
It
So-
is dead. It is dead, Steve, and it's
Yeah.
not compressible. It's an obligation by whoever received that aid. You can't escape
Right.
it.
Yeah, it's a debt, right? Exactly.
Yes. And that doesn't change. The value to pay debt changes, but debt is debt.
Yeah, and $100 million to Ukraine means $100 million worth of US goods that Ukraine's going to have to buy or pay back. Or the US is going to have to,
Or
you know,
or if the US is actually sending supplies over, then you have to actually replenish those supplies. So
right.
defense contractors are actually getting paid right now. And
Right.
then so all of a sudden, then you have to, what are you going to do? You had a stockpile before and you spent them. So
Yeah.
you have to
The
replenish
reality
them.
is that it creates, you know, if you look at the balance sheet of a country,
Right.
it
That's
creates
what it is.
liabilities. It's like student debt in the US.
Right.
That are very, very difficult to forgive. It binds generations to come.
Okay,
It is
let's
very
continue.
that can be very dangerous. Very, very dangerous.
It's a weapon.
Yeah, it can be very dangerous if you don't know what you are doing. It's a double-edged sword. Debt. That is commitment. And as Kelly will say, debt is a commitment and is a contract. And it is a tensile strength of the international relations, of what social relations. So whether it's formal debt or credit or whatever, it is, once it's created, it is there. It is a being that is created, but which is very, very difficult to compress. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so difficult to forgive debt. But who is willing to forgive debt?
Okay, let's continue.
I found a similar situation to be existent in World War II. As head mechanical engineer of the USA Board of Economic Warfare, I had available to me copies of any so-called intercepts I wanted. Those were transcripts of listened to in intercontinental telephone conversations, along with letters and cables that were opened by the censor of and often deciphered and so forth. As a student of patents, I asked for and received all the intercept information relating to strategic patents held by both our enemies and our own big corporations. And I found the same money was often operative on both sides in World War II. The East India Company, the East India Company, whose flag I have shown to be the origin of ours, was a private enterprise chartered by the British. Quite clearly, the East India Company didn't lose the American Revolution. The British government lost the revolution, and the East India Company swiftly moved large amounts of its capital into U.S. America. With World War II over, I began to watch very closely the foreign investments patterning and the strategic metals movements, especially of copper, but those of silver and gold as well. In 1942, had all the monetary bullion gold in the world in the Kentucky Hills. During World War II, what was called the China Bloc, which was the Sung family and others backing Shanghai,
Chiang Kai-shek.
Chiang Kai-shek, thank you, were able to persuade the American Congress China had always been corrupt and was eternally corruptible. To completely avoid communism in China, Congress should let them have 100 million worth of gold bullion, 2 billion at January 1980 gold pricing, to be taken out of the Kentucky Hills. Personally, I don't think that gold ever went anywhere near China. I think it went right into the Swiss bank accounts of some clever thieves. But with that gold out of the Pandora's box of the USA Kentucky Hill vaults, it provided a gold lever with which to progressively pry loose more and more gold to be reintroduced into the lifeblood of world economic accounting. After World War II, with only the one exception of the 100 million worth of monetary gold bullion of the China Bloc, all the rest of the world's international monetary gold bullion was residing in the Kentucky Hills, USA vaults. All countries outside America had gone off the gold standard. In the course of international monetary negotiating that accompanied the USA's post-World War I and inadvertent ascendancy into being the master economic state, and the USA post-World War II attempts to rehabilitate the leading economies around the world by rehabilitating the economies of its vanquished nations and thereby increasing international trading. The USA was persuaded to reestablish the gold standard for accounting the international balance of trade. Gold is the super helicopter of the open world market trading stratagems of the makers of money for self by the legalized manipulation of the money equity of others, all unbeknownst to the initial wealth equity owning others. In 1934, Roosevelt's New Deal prohibited the further use of gold by USA citizens or USA businesses. By 1953, it became apparent that the Wall Street lawyers were moving the major American corporations out of America. Of the 100 largest corporations in America, four out of five of their annual investment dollars in new machinery and buildings for 1953 went exclusively into foreign operations. This 4/5 rate persisted for a score of years. The Wall Street lawyers told Mr. Eisenhower that they did not like the over altruistic social viewpoint of the Marshall Plan for helping underdeveloped countries. They liked foreign aid, but not exclusively for the development of undeveloped countries. The Wall Street lawyers approved of the foreign aid, wherefore the USA continued with annual foreign aid commitments by Congress. The average annual foreign aid appropriation has been $4 billion, 1950 value, per year over the 27-year period from 1952 to 1979, which amounted to $100 billion total. Each New Year's foreign aid bill had a rider that said that if American companies were present in the country being aided, the money had to be spent through those American companies. In the foreign countries, the corporations, individuals could again deal in gold. Foreign aid paid for all the new factories and machinery of all the American corporations moving out of America. This became a fundamental pattern. First, the 100 largest corporations, then the 200 largest corporations following. Then what Fortune calls the 500 largest corporations. Moving out of America could be done readily because a corporation is only a legal entity. It is not a human being. That's changed. It had no physical body to pass through immigration or migration. You and I cannot move out of America because we are physical. We need a passport. A corporation does not. So the Wall Street lawyers simply moved their prime corporation operations elsewhere. It was clearly evident that with only 7% of the world's population in the USA, and with 2 cars already in many USA garages, by far the major portion of further exploitation of the world's people's needs and desires would develop outside of the US of America. By the main objective of the Wall Street lawyers was for the corporations to get out from under the tax control of the American government. In 1933, American people had saved the corporations by subsidizing them. Then, 20 years later, the Wall Street lawyers moved them out of America, getting the American people to pay for the move. This allowed the corporations to acquire gold entities while the USA citizens and small domestic businesses could not do so.
Let's pause just for a second.
Soon after
Let's
Sure.
pause just for a second. I looked this up because I got stumped on this pass-through immigration and emigration. And I looked it up. Immigration is moving into a country and emigration is moving out of your country. So that's interesting.
Thank you for clearing. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, emigration, the act of leaving one's own country to settle permanently in another, moving abroad. Mass emigration from Ireland to the United States meant mass immigration for the United States. Interesting. Yeah, well, I never knew that foreign aid required that the money had to be invested in US businesses if it was over there. I never knew that. That was new information.
Say again.
He says that if US gives foreign aid to a country, and if an American business is in the country, that foreign aid has to be spent with the American business. That's what he just said.
But it's general always is a general rule for international aid, especially country to country.
Yeah, I never knew that.
Mhm. But I think the role of gold is very interesting there.
Mhm.
You know, in that real money is gold and silver and copper. But, you know, I don't want you to know that. So if real money is gold and copper and silver, why are prices so depressed?
On gold and silver?
Yes, all of those, they are very depressed. And copper.
Why are they depressed right now? Or you're asking, or at this particular, because over the long term,
It's
my understanding,
always
they're
been
all up.
depressed all the time. In part,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
like it is springing up because of intrinsic value.
Yeah, an ounce of gold is $1,893.
Yeah.
I bought Kruger
Right.
ends back in 1980. I bought them at $650 an ounce. And the next week they went down to $348 an ounce. And so I thought I was an idiot. But now my Kruger ends are worth $1,893 each. That's interesting. I wish I had a lot more of them.
Well, gold was called a barbaric relic by no other than the great British economic, what's the name again?
Milton Friedman?
Keynes.
Oh,
John
okay.
Maynard Keynes.
Oh, yeah.
And
Lord
it's been
Maynard
considered a
Keynes.
barbaric relic since. But what is happening? What has been happening lately is that the price of gold has been depressed. Gold is being disparaged still, but is bought in massive quantities by central bankers. So it is interesting to realize that the individual is not on the same side as the central bank.
Hmm.
Are you complete?
Mm.
Well,
You want to give
Were
somebody
you-
else a chance to read, Joe? That's great. And if you want to continue to read, that's great too.
I can read if you want to.
yeah, please. Yeah. I'm a little, yeah,
Okay, where do we start?
I'm a little tired.
I think soon after Eisenhower.
Soon after Eisenhower's hour.
Okay, soon as Eisenhower's 1952 election to the presidency, the lawyers reminded him once more that America clearly has won the war only through its brilliant generalships, backed up by American free enterprise, and said, "We want you to stop the welfare state-inclined American government from competing with free enterprise. You must cut out all Navy yards and arsenals. They compete against the free enterprise corporations, which are quite capable of doing the same work as the Navy yards, but of doing it much more efficiently. Okay. You must turn all such production over to private industry, cut the USA post office, and turn out over to private enterprise, cut out the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, and turn that to the insurance industry. Although much of this transfer of production from government to private enterprise control was never completed, Eisenhower, goaded on by his lawyers, initiated the flow of taxpayer-financed, highly trained personnel, and especially their technical know-how to private enterprise. This irreversible trend continues on to this present day, as can be shown by the history of the whole of the atomic energy field. Those acquainted with the story of atomic bomb development remember the momentous occasion when theoretical fission was discovered in 1939 by Hahn and Stresemann in Germany, and secretly communicated by them to American physicists, who checked out their calculation and found them correct, and then persuaded Einstein to go to Roosevelt to tell him that this was so, and that Hitler's scientists were hot on the trail. Franklin Roosevelt, exercising war power given him by Congress, in effect instantly appropriated $80 billion for what became known as the Manhattan Project. Later, that initial $80 billion appropriation was supplemented by an additional $17 billion for a total of $115 billion of American people's money that went into developing atomic energy. The Wall Street lawyers' grand strategist sent a man named Lewis Strauss to Washington to join in the World War II effort. Strauss was a partner in the Wall Street banking house of Kuhn Loeb. He was also a brilliant son-in-law of Adolph Hawks, president of the New York Times. Strauss was made an admiral in the gratitude for his forsaking Wall Street to help America win the war. After the war, Admiral Strauss was appointed to the Atomic Energy Commission. In 1953 by Eisenhower, named him commissioner chairman. Strauss and Wall Street lawyers persuaded Eisenhower that the Atomic Energy Commission must not be in competition with capitalism and must be turned over to private enterprise. So it was. $155 billion worth of it, all of which has been paid for by the American public, but it consisted of work so secret that only the scientists who were intimate with the work understood it. All that was necessary to correct the situation was to give contract to private enterprise to carry on the atomic work, and to let the government scientists go to work for the private enterprise corporations. At this point, the Wall Street lawyers and Strauss persuaded Eisenhower that the United States Bureau of Standards scientists were in competition with the private enterprise and must be curbed. Strauss assured Eisenhower that the corporations would take on all the Bureau discarded scientists. What the Wall Street lawyers' grand strategy realized was something momentous, to wit, that in the new 99.9% invisible reality of alloys, chemistry, electronics, and atomic, scientific and technical know-how was everything. Physical land and building were of no further interest to capitalism. Metaphysical know-how was the magic wand of the second half of the 20th century world power structures. Physical properties were subject to deterioration, taxable and cumbersome. Advised to do so by the lawyers, capitalism and private enterprise set about after World War II to monopolize all strategic technological know-how, i.e. all metaphysical properties, and to dump all physical property. They called for an economic program by which people will be forced to buy the apartment and houses to get all physical properties of capitalism hands. The post-Eisenhower era became most suitably identified as the lawyer capitalism and of no risk, sure-thing, free enterprise. The whole of atomic development was know-how. Scientific had the know-how, and anybody without the technical information could not even speak their language. The know-how club, monopolized lawyer capitalism, was a very tight club. Furthermore, the non-member 4 billion plus human beings on planet Earth knew nothing about the invisible micro, macro, non-sensorially tuned in able reality. Large private enterprise had now hired all the know-how scientists and engineers. They seemingly could keep the public out of their affairs forever. The world power structure had the US government completely emasculated. Emasculate the Bureau of Standards. There was an earnest and concerned battle by a few responsible scientists to keep the Bureau intact, but they were overwhelmed. Henceforth, all science must be done by the private corporation themselves or under the subsidized university, college, and private laboratory work. They to appreciate the extent of this know-how monopoly of the corporations, one need only look over the wording of a scientist and engineering help wanted advertisement of a big corporation in the many pages of the New York Times Sunday business section, or of their counterpart publication in other big cities. In the invisible esoteric world of today's science, there is no way for the American government or public without the US Bureau of Standards scientists to follow the closely held technical secret of a big profit-oriented corporation. To a small extent, such popular journals as Scientific American help people follow details of this and that special case science without learning of the significance of the information in respect to the comprehensive socio-economic evolution. No economic accounting book lists metaphysical asset. Metaphysics is held to be insubstantial, meaning in Latin, nothing of which to stand. Patent can be granted only for special cases, i.e., limited physical practice application of abstract generalized principles, which principles alone are inherently metaphysical and opaque and unpatentable, being only discovered and not invented. But physical patents are capital. We have two fundamental realities in our universe, the physical and the metaphysical. Physicists identify all physical phenomena as the exclusive manifest of energy, energy associative as matter, or dissociative as electromagnetic behavior, radiation. Both of these energy states are reconvertible one into the other because there is no experimental evidence of energy being either created or lost. World scientists, philosophers now concede it to be in evidence that universe is eternally regenerative. The physicists have found that energy will always articulate levels electromagnetically, gravitationally, chemically, by reactive forces, by vibratory waves, etc. Metaphysics consists only on the wayless, dimensionless, abstract thoughts and mathematical principles that cannot level physical neither in respect to instrument dials. Energy is either of its state, being physical, in either of its states, being physical, can be entered into the capital account ledgers. The large issue today is the technical know-how that governs the transformations of energy between its two states. Know-how is metaphysics. Metaphysics now rules when the head of one of US's largest banks was asked what commodities were involved in that bank's import-export dealing with the rest of the world on behalf of the Chinese government, he answered that know-how was a prime commodity being acquired by the Chinese through that bank.
By the Chinese.
I spent a great deal of time since World War II in Japan dealing with the industrialists and have personally witnessed the Japanese acquisition by contract of a whole complex of exquisitely scientific packages of industrial know-how, together with the respective follow-through educational service, all acquired from and performed by engineered and business administration teams of many of the leading American corporations.
Let's pause right there just for a second. I want to comment about this Chinese thing because America they're doing major things now because of chip technology, and this idea of the Chinese taking over proprietary inventions of the U.S. has become a major thing. Right now, Taiwan has the most advanced chip technology on the planet, and the chip technology, however, is made with machines that are constructed in Germany, and Germany has the machines that make that technology, that make the parts that go into the technology. And so the US right now is scrambling because if China took over Taiwan, we wouldn't have any chips. And so we started with this Huawei thing, with economic actions against Huawei a couple of years ago. We've talked about that on this call. But I'm just saying that the technological know-how that the Chinese have been acquiring is under scrutiny and is not perceived as they're doing things about it. That I heard somebody say that if the act today had an act of some economic thing that's a little tiny department in the US government has $100 million budget, it's the one that came up with the policy which says that they want to stop giving China access to that technology. The process has been going on for a couple of years, but they came out with a thing in the last couple of months that is horrendous. And right now, if China tried to take over Taiwan, there would probably be a war because Taiwan has the technology that the Americans need. And right now the Chinese are concerned about it because obviously things are, in other words, this is a major issue today. I wish I knew more specifics on the facts, but I do believe that the article I read was in the New York Times. What?
Let me ask you a question. How much did America pay for the metaphysics of the atomic energy, of atomic bomb?
Well, we got it from Germany.
For free.
Yeah.
You didn't pay that.
This is what the Operation Paperclip was all about too. It was all about making sure
So-
that
so-
technology came to America. Yeah.
Let me pursue also. How much is the American paying for all the brains that are lured to America because America is this? Zero. Third question to you. Has China expressed that they want to invade Taiwan?
China wants to, what's the word? They want to reclaim it as part of
Yeah, I was about to say, but not invade. Yeah, but
Reclaim from
reclaim it.
who? From who?
they want to reclaim whatever right of independence Taiwan is trying to claim. Because back in the day of the Chinese Revolution, all the people, those people fled to Taiwan and kind of took over Taiwan as a government in exile against the Chinese communists. And China has never given up its land rights to Taiwan.
Is China communist?
China's not crumbling.
I'm asking, is China communist? Because you will use, like the antagonism of China against mainland and Taiwan. Is China is China communist?
Is China
Yeah,
communist?
communist. Is it communist? It's got communist principles, but it's capitalistic in a lot of different ways.
Is America communist?
That's a good question.
Okay.
It's social corporate welfare. I mean, I'll just say that.
My point is, as Becky says, and as practice, that we should beware of just jumping on the bandwagon of the main story that is being told. We should be able to, step aside in lag and think. Right? That's the whole exercise that we've been trying to do. If you jump on the bandwagon, you quickly become ideological. And to me, I don't know to other people, to me, ideology is death.
Right.
It is a death sentence, intellectual death sentence. Because in a world that is eternally regenerative, you are deciding to become fossilized by being prisoner of a phase. Ideology is equivalent to be prisoner of a pattern, of a phase. That will change. That was my comment. I try as much as I can to stay away from the large discourse of all of these talks of things, because if you get into it, you have no headway. You don't understand, because the forces at play are huge,
Well, the other thing is that
yeah.
okay. I was
I was
going to
just
say,
going to say it's still the East India Company at play. I'm through, Richard. Go on.
well, I was just going to say, the way I kind of think about the question of is China communist, or is any country communist, or is US capitalist? The question always begs for a binary answer. It's got to be one or the other. And yet, in our kind of discussion, vis-a-vis Fuller's thinking and everything, what really is necessary is a hybrid or a co-binary, if you want. Because one of the things that Fuller argued in this book and others, that the underbelly of communism and capitalism are really bad for the people. Either way, it's the dark side that causes a lot of troubles. So the communists won't sort of accept the principle of individualism, and capitalism won't accept the principle of collectivism, in the same way that the Wall Street lawyers talked Eisenhower into disagreeing with the New Deal because it was too socialist. It sort of keeps pushing us into this binary kind of questions about, are you this or are you that? And it's sort of a sad commentary on how the world is organized around binaryism. Yeah.
Agreed.
It's
What's that, Joe?
I was just going to say, no, I always found the problem is labels.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're overgeneralizing, exactly what is actually taking place in the economy, and I think that's what the real, and it's a problematic in any kind of, and I agree with you, Manu, ideologies where thinking goes to die. It's where you can no longer address a problem on an individual level. You have to address it according to the ideology. And it's not integrating new information. It's almost dogma in a sense. And that's highly problematic. The other thing I just wanted to comment very quickly on is the idea of scientists in Wall Street. It's interesting because I think about that in terms of how many scientists went to Wall Street, the quants, so to speak, at one point, and still are. They're still there, but in some of the models that they were building in the relationship between scientists and Wall Street, still it's probably it's stronger than ever. I'll just say that.
Yeah, it was also interesting the role of this Strauss. If you in the book, The American Prometheus, about what's the name of this guy who was head of the project in I think it's in Arizona. Was it in Arizona or New Mexico?
Are you talking about the Manhattan Project?
New Mexico.
Yes,
Yeah.
Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
this Strauss is very prominent. I mean, in the book, you know, if you listen to the book, wow, the content exchanges are really described to a detail, and it's quite interesting.
The movie does a good job too.
But the movie doesn't
You
speak
saw it?
to what Oppenheimer did to David Bohm. And his he was the mentor, thesis supervisor of David Bohm, a brilliant young physicist. And because Bohm explored a communist kind of activity, which he then realized wasn't what he understood communism might be all about, but it was used against him in the McCarthyism, and he was arrested. And anyway, he ended up in Brazil and Israel and so forth, but he wrote a paper that was brilliant. But Oppenheimer had already ostracized him. But when Oppenheimer read the paper, he couldn't find fault in it. So what he told all the academic reviewers that would get that paper is to say, just don't read it. Just put it on your list of to-dos and ignore it.
Yeah. David
and
Bohm, he was big on pilot wave theory, which was an alternative explanation to the Copenhagen interpretation. And what's really interesting, I didn't know that Oppenheimer had ostracized or been used that political thing, because later that happened to Oppenheimer. He was accused of being a communist. He was stripped of his security clearance and taken off of the project, and was completely defamed by the time it was done.
Oh, that's news too. I didn't know that part.
It's in the movie.
But what is interesting is how Wall Street can take one of the lawyers they own and just put in there in a position of doing whatever, and give the person, even without any expertise, real expertise, but that expertise of money on Wall Street, the title. I mean, Strauss was made an admiral. Does he know anything of war? No, I don't know. I don't think so. Did he?
You guys, I put in a couple links down here. I found the article that explains the chip controversy, and it's called The Silicon Blockade from The Daily, which is a podcast from the New York Times. I've got the link there. And I've started out, the first link I posted was an article from Sabina Hassenfelder, who's a physicist, who talks about, is Moore's law dead? And Moore's law is this idea that computer chip capacity doubles every 18 months. And the question is, will it ever hit a peak where that doesn't happen anymore? And she talks about that in that first link, and that's about 28 minutes. And I think if you listen to that thing about Moore's law and the progression of chips and the technology involved in the chips, and learn about what the future capacity of chips could be, and because she says that, you know, Moore's law will probably continue for a while for one reason or another, and she explains why. Then if you read that article called The Silicon Blockade, it goes into big detail about Taiwan, about the machines in Germany, and how this technology is around all the world, and the US is making moves to bring that technology into America for our national security. And I saw Joe just put something in there about Lewis Strauss. What's that about, Joe?
It was just a background of, it's his wiki page. So, I mean, it's
any other comments?
Talks about his time at the, okay, sorry.
I also want, as his time at the what, Joe?
Atomic Energy Commission, and then he became an assistant to Herbert Hoover.
Huh. I wanted to say that, to me, from what I've seen, you can call China communist and you can call America capitalist, but China and America have been captured by Wall Street. So you can discuss all those political fringes, but it comes down to the fact that Wall Street's taking, it's just, we have a crazy time. And, I mentioned Robert F. Kennedy Jr. This guy has been spending his last 40 years uncapturing suing captured entities and agencies in the US. This guy's got a real background in it. So, okay, good. Shall we continue reading, or is there more discussion?
Let's continue.
Yeah, well, going back to a discussion, and I don't know if it was this group or another group, and we got into the question of who's the they. Well,
Yeah.
it looks like out of this discussion, the they are being identified as Wall Street.
Right.
Wall Street lawyers. Are we putting some kind of face to that amorphous they?
Yeah, exactly.
But maybe Wall Street lawyers are another euphemism for they, and they're still not very clear as to who the hell they are.
Exactly right. Good. Are we ready to continue to read?
Okay, let me
Are
continue.
we there or are we up here? Where are we here?
Oh, no, we're there.
Okay, we're down here. Okay.
The post-World War II, Japanese had already perceived that they did not need to own the physical mines of metallic ores because they had learned also how to carry on exclusively with the melting down and recirculating of the world's metals, particularly those poured into the Orient and Western Pacific Island by the USA during World War II in the form of now obsolete ergo scrap armament. The essence of Japan's recent decades economic success has been the acquisition and realization of the industrial technology know-how, wealth existent exclusively in metaphysical know-how, in contradistinction to strictly physical land properties, tools, and end product. With all their pre-World War II machinery smash, the Japanese and German acquired new, vastly improved industrial equipment with which to realize their know-how production. Whereas the World War II winning USA and European allies using their old technology became more preoccupied with making money than in producing superior goods, products. Because of the foregoing, it was now possible to maintain that hidden know-how capability within private corporate wars. Since 99% of humanity does not as yet understand science's mathematical language, less than 1% of humanity is scientifically literate. Ergo, the lawyer's strategy of tight monopolization of scientific know-how within the scientifically staffed corporations was highly feasible. In 1929, at the time of a Great Wall Street crash, only about 1% of the USA big corporations had research department. Now, half a century later, all the big corporations have all-powerful research departments, other than those in which pure scientists are engaged in academic work under some corporate or government subsidy. Through the national defense budget armaments development, all the once risky research and development costs of enterprise are paid for by the public through taxation. The big oil corporations knew long ago that humanity would ultimately run out of an adequate supply of petroleum and other fossil fuels. Through coal, though coal may last 1,000 years. That's why, by the means we have reviewed, the oil companies acquire control of know-how on atomic energy as well as the atomic plants and equipment paid for originally by the USA government. The power structure's only interest is in selling energy, the only energy that they can run through, only energy that they can run through a meter. They are not in the least interested in anyone's getting wind power except themselves. Very rich men love having their sailing yacht wind driven to Europe or the South Seas, but this is not for the people. People's power must be piped or wired to them only through meters. When in 1972, all the power structure capital had converted its dollars into gold, oil, and other highly concentrated and mobile equities, then President Richard Nixon severed the USA dollar from its government guaranteed gold equity value of $35 per ounce. The USA people's dollar buying power plummeted. Now in 1980, being worth only 5% of a 1971 USA dollar. By 1974, much of the world's buying power landed in the laps of the Arabs, who also sat atop the cheap petroleum source of the world. In effect, they had both the money with which to buy the petroleum and the largest reserves to be bought. If someone wanted to buy the petroleum, often they couldn't do so because few in the world had the monetary resources remaining with which to do so. The Arab realized they would have to lend out their money to work, but they had no experience in such investment matters. The Arab had no knowledge of the vast industrial production and distribution, technical and administrative requirements. Nor had they any experience in the exploitation of the world energy industry prior to their own lands exploitation by others before the onslaught of the petroleum companies giants. The Arab had not known how to discover, drill for, refine, and distribute the petroleum upon which they had been sitting unwittingly for thousands of years.
Let's pause just for a minute there. I want to bring something out here. He says over here, the guaranteed gold equity was $35 per ounce back in 1972. Then he says by 1980, being worth only 5%. So if 5 cents on a dollar, if 5% is $35, 10% is $3.50, and 100% would be, or no, it would be $70, and 100% would be $700. That's what I paid. I paid $685 for my ounce of gold. And there's the numbers right there to demonstrate. I thought that was quite clever. I also wanted to point out here about the Arabs. There's a big thing going on because the Arabs have purchased hundreds, well, I want to say thousands of acres, and it may be more than thousands. It could be tens of thousands of acres in Arizona. And they have the water rights under that, and they're taking Arizona aquifers to grow hay in Arizona to ship it back to Saudi Arabia. This is, and now it's becoming a big issue because it's one more way the Arabs are using U.S. resources basically against the U.S. So I just thought that was kind of curious here as we. There's my comment on gold and my comment on the Arabs. And I have a great article on that, on the Arabs using the Arizona water. Anyway, I'm complete. Any other comments?
Yeah, just a quick comment that may be somewhat associated, but that's part of what's going on in Hawaii right now in Maui. They've been under siege for quite a few years, the locals, in terms of big corporations getting a monopoly on the water. And there's been shortages of water for local people and local things. Now, what I'm hearing is that the developers are hovering over Maui like vultures, waiting to buy out people, so they can complete the takeover or the total control of land development and so forth in Hawaii or in Maui. Yeah,
in fact, I don't want to say tribal, I don't know, the native Hawaiians that are there have put out a mass bulletin to all of their people not to let this catastrophe motivate them to sell their own native ground to developers. And I even heard a conspiracy theory that part of the reason why the system didn't work is because the industry wants to take over that thing. Now, the ground is toxic. It probably won't be usable for 10 or 20 years, but industry can wait 10 or 20 years, So
yeah, and the local person that owns a home can't
wait 20 years. They got to have a place to live now.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that part of this capitalism is this greed. this somehow, and I've been victim by, I've actually been part of the problem. Americans do not, it's part of our nature to take advantage of other people's loss. That's just, it's a capitalist thing to do. Somebody's had a tragedy. They just lost their home. I buy it in foreclosure. I fix up and sell it at a profit. That's considered a legitimate business.
Yeah,
But
buy
nobody's-
low, sell high.
Yeah, and that poor person who lost that house is out in the street. And I've been so, and I will tell you that I've had big issues about profit, and over the last 15 years, I've tried to create conversations about this because back in the 90s, I actually bought a couple of trailers. Let me tell you, and I think I've shared with this years ago with the call, but there was a big giant mobile home park, which is usually low income people. There's a big giant mobile home park in this place in Orem, Utah down there. A big land developer came in to buy it out. They bought it and they went and tried to get it zoned for conversion. But Orem had a law that you cannot buy a property and kick out a low income tenant. So the developers canceled their sale on the property and went back to the owners of the property and leased it for 99 years. And because that property was not purchased, because it was leased for 99 years, they could kick off all the poor people. So they took over the property, they started evicting all these people, and I went in and bought 3 or 4 of those trailers at a discount. Now I went in and tried to give these people as much money as I could, but I also, some of them I negotiated lower prices on. I just fell into this capitalist thing. And that was a huge, when I got done with that about 5 years later, all of a sudden it was like a wake up call for me. I thought, what the hell did I do there? Every time I drive by that street, there's a Chevron gas station on that corner with a Wendy's in there. And on a couple of occasions, I pulled in there and then realized it was the corner, and I pull out and go to some other place. I have major ethical issues over that part, and I haven't forgiven myself yet. So this capitalism thing is a weird thing, totally weird. Okay, now I've confessed. So you guys are my confessors. It's 10:39. Let's see, where are we here?
In 1977.
Yeah, we could finish all of the page. We'll finish this page, and then
Okay.
we'll close it up.
In 1977, the king of Saudi Arabia said to the leading American banker with large oil interests, "My bank don't know anything about international banking and major industrial accommodation." The banker said, "Would you like me to run your banks?" The king said, "Of course." So the American banker did. And in the process, he taught them the international and transactional industrial finance management. There's no question that the few who had title to American oil find it essential to amalgamate their operations with the world great oil companies with which own the vast equipment of world-around distribution and entire accounting capabilities, as well as the vast majority of refineries and petrochemical industries. The great oil companies control it all. In general, they are non-communist. Arabia are one of the same. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Country, OPEC, officialdom, regardless of national political differences, is very probably run entirely by the oil corporations' trillions of dollars of persuasiveness. It is relevant to this point, at this point, to note that Arab inadvertent isolation of both the physical wealth item, 1, underlying monetary goal, and 2, prime negotiable energy commodity petroleum, and the concurrent discovery of the utter lack of know-how, clearly differentiate out the relative values of A, the purely physical petroleum and gold, and B, the exclusively metaphysical know-how wealth. It turned out that B was not in demand as well as scarcest. The physical wealth was thus proved to be of approximately zero value, while the metaphysical know-how wealth proves to be the prime economic, good health constituent of wealth.
Well,
Moreover,
let's just pause right there. We'll start next week at the top of page 112 and do the more over. And if we need to, wow, we've covered a lot of ground here. And if we need to, we'll begin that with that last paragraph. In fact, let's just do that. We'll begin at the bottom of page 111 and repeat that paragraph. Is that okay with everybody? I don't want to chop everybody off, but and it's time to be rolling out. So, and you haven't said much, and this has been kind of complicated and over my head. How are you feeling, and what are you taking away today? And you're on mute there. You're on mute.
Thank you. This book, Critical Path, when we asked for it, actually because I hadn't read it before, where this is journey that is taking me on with our group here. It's a roller coaster, right? So for today, the major one is that because the money that these big corporations have actually become very wealthy on are the people's money, right? And so few actually know it, to the point that we are happily giving the money away. And I can see, from the reading today, I can see that happening in our country as well. But primarily in the US, the huge problem then is that all that money is made at that level, and none of it is going back to the people, right? For education, for healthcare, for housing, and literally for the basic needs. And you know what? The minute anything catastrophic were to happen in America, like if the people were unhappy, like say for instance, there have been a few times where decisions were made, or because there is this, like what happened in France as well, right? The African French people, I think that at one point they were immigrants in the past, and now they are French people, and they are in this one location because they do not have access to the same kind of resources, wealth, or they don't know how to create it. I don't know. But the point is that they're kind of isolated there, and there was an uprising at one point. There was some riots and so on, right? Same thing has been happening in different parts of America, different times, the US. And I realized that these huge companies and the wealth they've created, these corporations in East India or whatever you will, Wall Street, they can just walk away. They can literally walk away. They can walk away to any country, anywhere in the world. They can leave countries behind in messes, and it won't affect them. That for me was the biggest horrific realization. Yes. So Richard, how do you feel, and what is your takeaway today?
Well, I feel much better on one side, and even deeper depression on the other side in terms of some of the things that we've been talking about. I really liked becoming reconnected with the Oppenheimer-Bohm story, and realized that, in a sense, both were ostracized because of false accusations, if you want, about who they were and their reputations. And I mean, that's part of what Manu was talking about earlier, that these sessions are all about learning in many respects for us individually. So I certainly take that away. Your last remarks, Anne, sort of brought me right back into the real life politics of the US. And all of a sudden it says to me, the former president who walked away from everything and he could get away with it, whether it's employers or people who are living in his apartments, And he continues to think that way. And it's almost like if that continues, that kind of attitude in one person and it's spread through others, the perpetuation of what you were just talking about will just go on and on and on. The big dogma sort of corporations and people will be able to just walk away and be free of it. It also, for me personally, it ties into the area that I've been working in over the years in suicide. And one of the issues in suicide is that society figures out ways to get people they don't want to be part of their society to kill themselves. And then they wash their hands and say, I didn't do it. They did it. And so there's a culture in the dogma of who deserves to live, they back to Malthus, that exercise this kind of strategy that tricks you into doing things that in effect gaslights you as a group or an individual into doing harm to yourself when it's a society that really wanted to harm you in the first place. So I take that away as more food for thought in terms of trying to sort things out. I'm complete on that, and over to Joe in terms of how are you now, and how was the evening discussions for you?
I thought I'm feeling well. I'm a little bit tired, but I'm doing well, and so I mean, there's a lot of takeaways. Actually, one of the main takeaways that I have is I was unaware of the requirement to if you receive foreign aid, actually, that part of that went to the corporation that actually was doing business in that country. And yeah, that was something that was new to me. That was a very important takeaway because I have gotten away from studying things like trade for a while, and it made me kind of just look up even just things like the investor dispute settlement clause, which was part of TPP, and well, it didn't pass, but nonetheless, it was in there, and it makes you just see that what the power actually corporations do have. So that was one of my major takeaways. You know, I very much appreciated too Manu pointing out the separation from the fundamentals of what of the company, where it was where it was a point where it was creating value, where it became more of a product of not, I won't call it the market, but of financialization, and how that actually you know, kind of leads to decision making on the company's part that may not always be in the employee's best interest. So I think that that's a significant point that's been made pretty regularly, actually. I have some things about the FDIC, and you know, those are my major takeaways. I mean, there's the criticism of what we often hear is there is that the free market is a figment of our imaginations, and I agree with that there's no such thing as a truly free market, and that it is an academic exercise. So sometimes I find those discussions to be unhelpful because we start as we had mentioned a little bit earlier, labeling things. And either, you're either a free market economist, or you're I guess you could be a Keynesian economist, or you're a Marxist of some sort. And I don't even think Keynes was actually pretty conservative, if people look at it. But anyway, that gets back to the idea of labels not being very helpful. So yeah, those are some of my major takeaways. I really I thought that there's some practical things that actually I could walk away with to really research here. Also, the relationship between quants and Wall Street. So, Manu, how are you feeling? What do you take away from today?
Well, I feel that I've learned quite a few this morning. I'm grateful and thankful for our discussions. During the call, a few things came to mind, and I just made a small list here. Going from a book that I read that's called Creature from Jekyll Island.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in that book, the Kuhn, Loeb, and Co. is very important. Actually, Kuhn or Loeb, they came from Germany. And with the Morgans, they were instrumental in the establishment of the Federal Reserve in the US in 1913. Now, there is something that I call the revolving door strategy. Between the private and government. And listen to these names and try to link to something. Strauss, we'll talk about him. But there is Kissinger, Henry Kissinger, 1974. The deal with the Arabs concerning that oil for defense deal, and dollars, then the petrodollars. Then Greenspan after that, then Bernanke, then Powell today. And it all seemed that, every time that there is a specific to resolve in a way of big money, they know how to position themselves and their people in the government in order to have control of all the levers and the channels. And then another point that was important is, really gold, silver, copper as real money. And then I have this, I say real freedom requires real knowledge and real practice, a lifelong commitment to learning and doing. That's what I take, that's my biggest takeaway here, is that you want to stand a chance to understanding not only you, but the forces at play, and to be having kind of any influence to your environment, you really need to commit to real education and practice of it for your whole life. And it's not something that people simply do. So it is open to us to share this message, to dig it, to exchange it, to discuss it, and to do according to those principles that we learn about. That's my biggest takeaway. So Steve, how do you feel? What do you take away?
Well, I'm grateful that we reread page 102. I mean, because I've been wondering where this corporate capture, when this concept of corporate capture of an agency came over. And here's Bucky in this book saying that Eisenhower got captured. And I've been you know, I don't want to make this too political, but Robert F. Kennedy is running a campaign for a Democratic president. His uncle and his dad wanted to disband the CIA and scatter it to the wind. And the whole, there's just so much there in terms of how the assassination of John F. Kennedy was probably through the CIA, and then the CIA was implicated in the assassination of his dad. He doesn't say the CIA killed his dad. He says they were implicated, but there's proof. He's satisfied. There's a book written by somebody else on the CIA's involvement in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I just, you know, I like to say, you know, there are a lot of conspiracy theorists, Guy, and I hear all these conspiracy theorists, but I come back to this one big conspiracy, and that is ignorance. The reason why evil, the reason why non-justice, and the reason why bad things happen is because good people stay ignorant. I'm grateful that we're reading this book. And I'll tell you, things are getting so politically volatile and crazy. And then with all these economic or these geological disasters, I mean, we're going to see fires and, you know, and I wish all these guys in the American Congress over the last 30 years who denied climate change would stand up and say, okay, I was wrong. You know, there's part of me that wants to take that guy who threw a snowball in the Senate and said there is no, you know, no global warming. Here's a snowball in the middle of June. That guy, he, and if he's deceased, then his family needs to say, my grandpa was wrong. I don't know. I just, we live in a crazy time, and I think the only hope is to come out of ignorance. And so I'm grateful for listening to Bucky. And, you know, I didn't know that he was hired as an editor for Fortune magazine, and therefore gave him the excuse to do all this research on productivity in America and how that productivity, American business affected the world. I didn't know that he was, what was the other thing that he was?
Reading cables, that was big.
Yeah, he was reading cables as a result of what position did he have?
I don't know.
Security clearance.
See, he must have been with DOD or something.
At the bottom of page 103, it says, I was the editorial staff of the Fortune magazine. And then over on page 104, he says, I found a similar situation to exist in World War II as head mechanical engineer of the USA Board of Economic Warfare. Board of Economic Warfare. I had available to me copies of many so-called intercepts, which were, so I didn't know that he was involved in those things. So that was exciting to learn about that. It just gives a little bit more credibility to this Buckminster Fuller character. I'm real grateful for everybody being on the call for the, I get so much more out of it than just reading it on my own, because we're stopping, we're pausing, and each of you are contributing your perspective. So I'm grateful for that. I'm complete. And look, it's 11:01 my time. So that means even though we started a few minutes beyond the appointed time, we're ending pretty close to the appointed time. Thank you all.
It's wonderful to see all of you.
Yeah.
Yep. See you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.